What is up, weather enthusiasts? I'm your host, Pat's Path Predictor. Let's get right into the weather. Alright, so here's the situation we have for you, ladies and gentlemen. We have quite a bit to discuss today with Gabrielle, as well as our area of interest in the main development region. More and more have been popping up, especially over there over the last few days. Also, a couple of models are picking up on our Central American gyre threat again, so we're going to be talking about all three of those things today in this video. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive right into it right here. Starting off with the National Hurricane Center, this is the latest on Tropical Storm Gabrielle right here. We're going to go ahead and pull up the public advisory for you. So here's the situation. Maximum sustained winds are at 50 miles per hour. It's moving west-northwest at 15 miles per hour. Minimum central pressure is 1,004 millibars, but its tropical storm wind field is actually quite large. As a matter of fact, its tropical storm force winds extend out 290 miles from the center. So this does have a large tropical storm force wind field right here that we're going to want to watch out for. However, the main headline is Gabrielle is still struggling over the central Atlantic right here. And as we show you with the discussion and as we show you with the satellite imagery, we'll go ahead and show you why it is. But with that being said, let's go ahead and pull up the discussion as of right now. So this is the situation that we have for you right here, and we'll go ahead and read this out. Gabrielle continues to struggle this morning as a pronounced swirl of low-level clouds is unable to muster up much in the way of deep convection near its center. Gabrielle's poor structure is due to ongoing westerly vertical wind shear and a significant amount of dry air entrainment that is infiltrating its circulation. The initial intensity is held at 45 knots based on recent scatometer data of at least 40 knots, but this value remains above the latest satellite imagery estimates. So that's something to keep in mind as well. Atmospheric conditions are expected to remain hostile for a couple more days, meaning Gabrielle is likely to maintain its current intensity or weaken during that time. It is even possible it could decay into a non-effective post-tropical low for a time, which I do think is kind of interesting, assuming it survives. Most guidance suggests that the storm will move into more conducive conditions that persist into early next week, allowing Gabrielle to organize and strengthen as it tracks north to northeastward. The NHC intensity forecast is near the low end of the guidance envelope for the first 3 days, but lies closer to the middle for days 4 and 5. So that is an interesting change that we're looking at right there, potentially having this thing kind of weaken a little bit and then start to revamp its intensity right here. We'll have to pay attention and see how that ultimately goes. Gabrielle's more erratic track over the past 24 to 48 hours has now smoothed over the past 12 to 24 with a west-northwestward motion at 13 knots. This motion should persist over the next few days as the storm is steered primarily by a subtropical ridge over the central Atlantic. A turn towards the north or northeast is forecast to occur late this weekend and early next week when Gabrielle rounds the western periphery of the ridge and a frontal system approaches from the west. The NHC track forecast was adjusted just west of the track given the guidance's more westerly consensus of a weaker system inside the next 48 hours. So that's what you're looking at. Right here, confidence in the long-range forecast remains low, and interest in Bermuda should continue to monitor Gabrielle over the next several days. So here's your intensity forecast, expecting this to weaken back down to a 45-mile-per-hour tropical storm potentially in the next 12 hours, remain that way for the next couple of days, and then start to strengthen back up again once it moves into better conditions. So that is a situation that you're going to want to watch out for, especially as we go ahead and show you the cone. As we pull up the cone for you guys right here. First of all, look at this wind field. The wind field is really large, but it's mainly concentrated on the eastern and northern part of the center. It needs to wrap around the southwestern side of it first of all before anything really starts to happen. Second thing we're noticing right here is the track continues to be a lot more consistent and continues to be a lot more confident as we're looking at more of a north-northwesterly motion until it gets towards Bermuda when it starts to make that turn out to sea. Expected now to be a 90-mile-per-hour Category 1 hurricane. Some model guidance does forecast this to potentially be Category 2 or higher, and we will show you that in the next few minutes, but by and large, you're seeing that confidence increase just a little bit. We just need to watch what happens over the next, I would say, 24 to 48 hours. this still has probably a couple of days at least to get through bad conditions before it starts to move into better shear, more moisture, and that environment right there. If we start seeing something happening in the next 36 hours where, okay, we see more convection, we see a better environment start to take hold, that's when things will start to probably go off a little bit more with Gabrielle. Same thing, even the next 48 hours as well, that we're going to want to pay attention to. But by and large, Gabrielle is off to a good start with all things considered. It just needs to kind of get its act together in that time, and we'll have to pay attention to it here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. Another thing we are paying attention to is this area of interest right here. We did have an area of interest yesterday. It was kind of merged into this one as well. It kind of fell off a little bit. Let's go ahead and show you the archives, and we can go ahead and show you the tropical weather outlooks archives. Let's go ahead and show you what we saw earlier with this. You did have this first area of interest right here. We did see a decrease in the probabilities with this right here, and then by the end of it, we were at 0-0 by 2 a.m. But as of this morning, we now have this new area of interest that is being tagged by the NHC that we're going to want to watch out for. It's another wave coming off the coast of Africa as well, so definitely something to keep in mind. A tropical wave is forecast to move off the west coast of Africa by Friday morning. Some slow development of this system is possible over the weekend through the middle of next week while it moves west-northwestward across the eastern and central tropical Atlantic. 20% chance of formation in the next 7 days. So that's what you're looking at over here in parts of the eastern MDR and central MDR right here on top of Gabrielle over here spinning and trying to get its act together as well. So that's kind of your overall situation that we are looking at right here, and it's definitely something that we're going to want to pay attention to moving forward. Now shifting over to satellite imagery, let's go ahead and start with Gabrielle just to kind of give you an idea of what's going on with this. Here's what you have right here. Basically what we had yesterday was we had some convection. It was off to a good start with at least convection-wise. However, you're not looking as nearly as much convection as what you saw previously. It's a tropical cyclone, don't get me wrong. You're still seeing that LCL really turning with this right here, and there's really no sign of this slowing over the next few hours. But ultimately, it's nowhere near the convection where it's kind of bursting up over here. It is incredibly sheared as well, so that shear needs to calm down and it needs to get into a lower sheared environment before anything else happens. And then after that, it needs to kind of keep battling the dry air that it's dealing with. It's been doing an okay job of it. All things considered, it's doing an okay job at kind of maintaining itself despite this hostile environment. But ultimately, this needs to survive for another 36 to 48 hours before things start to get a ramp up once again. And could we see a little bit of weakening with it? Yeah, I could definitely see that happening. But ultimately, you just need a little bit more time. The system needs to kind of get its act together, and it needs to start making things happen, I would say, after about a day or so. And looking at water vapor imagery, you can kind of understand why I'm saying that right here. Let's go ahead and go to 30 frames right here. And as you can see right here, definitely a little bit more of a moist environment than before. As you're seeing with this area of circulation right here, it is moving into a pocket of moist air, at least in the upper levels right here. Well, let's see if it translates down to the lower levels, and if it does, it'll be in a better environment than previously. But ultimately, you do see it at least trying to get its act together, at least trying to fight some of the dry air that it's dealing with right here. And you do have a little bit of a moisture pocket that's kind of acting as its saving grace, at least in the upper levels. Right here, as this continues to struggle and as it continues to try to consolidate. Again, it will take time. It's going to be moving into a more moist environment down the road. Things will take time with Gabrielle, but by and large, you are still looking at a hurricane contender with this based on just the conditions that you have ahead with this. This may be like a 50-mile-per-hour tropical storm, and this may be a bit disorganized right now, but I've said this before, and I will say this again. It's kind of one of those scary 50-mile-per-hour tropical storms because of the conditions that's ahead of it, and because of the fact that we're looking at a much better environment than in the next couple of days than we are right now. So we have a little bit of uncertainty with this at this current point, but all the factors do point to this moving into a better environment and kind of turning out really good at the end of it. So that's what you're looking at with the water vapor imagery, looking at true color imagery. You can even see it more pronounced right here. You're seeing a more pronounced spin right here. Yeah, that spin is not going away anytime soon. This kind of honestly reminds me a little bit of Tropical Storm Fiona or Hurricane Fiona when it was a tropical storm, where it was kind of sheared off like this. It still was producing a lot of convection, don't get me wrong, but the center of it was way out of that deep convection, and it was kind of naked looking like this right here, but you still had a lot of convection blowing up. Now, as the shear started to calm down and as more convection started firing up, it got closer and closer and closer and closer to the center of circulation before ultimately kind of starting to wrap around there and organize into the hurricane it became before crashing into Puerto Rico. So am I saying the same scenario is going to happen here? No, but it does kind of remind me of this a little bit. The only difference is there's a lot more dry air associated with it, and that's something you're going to want to watch out for. But still, Fiona became a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm before we started even seeing convection in the center of circulation. So that's just one of those factors that you're going to want to consider, and we'll keep our eye on as well. We're going to go ahead now and show you the track models and the intensity. Here is your track models for you right here based on the latest guidance. Track models are in a lot more agreement now than they were in yesterday. The track models are pretty much locked in for the next 24 hours, a little bit more of spread in 48 hours. Then by 72 hours, there is some more spread, but it's a lot better than it was, I would say, yesterday. At this current point in time, yes, there's obviously still going to be spread with this, but ultimately you do look at a better spread with this right here, and especially as you even get to the long range forecast, it's not nearly as just all over the place. It's a lot more consistent, and that's the kind of consistency you absolutely want to see with this. So that's what you're looking at with your track models, but at least with in terms of the kind of the spread of this. In terms of the track itself, you're looking at this moving more to the west-northwest and then to the northwest before making that turn toward as it approaches Bermuda and then moves out to sea over there. If you're at Bermuda and in the Azores Islands, you're definitely going to want to watch out for this down the line, and we'll keep you updated on that moving forward. Here is your intensity guidance. Intensity is pretty interesting. We did see a bit of a backtrack in the 18Z and 0Z last night, but now things are starting to come back together. You're looking at potentially up to high-end Category 1, quite a few Category 2 intensity systems with this right here. The models, especially the HMON and the HWRF, are really leading the charge with this getting up to major hurricane strength. Majority of them keep it around Category 1, but the consensus definitely is higher than it was previously, and it's a lot less spread, and it's a lot more confident than what we saw before, because before, it just had a massive spread of between hurricane and tropical depression strength, and really not very much of a clamping in between. Now we're starting to see more of that right here, especially as we get past 60 hours out, as the system starts to intensify more and as we start to see better conditions start to take place. A lot of this clumping either kind of keeps it between high-end Category 1 to mid-range Category 3 right here. So the spread is a lot more believable, and it's a lot more consistent as well, rather than the inconsistent mess we saw yesterday. But ultimately, that's what you're going to want to watch out for, and we have also some model runs that we're going to go ahead and show you as well, not just for Gabrielle, but also the area of interest behind it as well. So starting with the European definitely has been a bit more conservative with this compared to the hurricane runs, at least in terms of taking its time to consolidate. It doesn't get down to a sub-1,000 millibar system until 87 hours out, and then as it starts to make that turn, it gets up to hurricane strength, potentially Category 2, as it moves into the subtropical Atlantic, and then becomes an extratropical cyclone from then on out as well. In regards to what we're looking at for the main development region, European isn't quite on board with it right now, but the NHC has tagged it, so we're definitely going to want to watch out for that as well, especially as we look at other models as well. Let's go ahead now and show you the GFS run. GFS run is pretty interesting, to say the very least. GFS has the system kind of taking its time and getting its act together, but now it's a lot better in terms of its initialization and in terms of its intensity. Before, the GFS was showing not that much development. It was having some initialization issues and all of that. Now that the 0Z kind of ran the data and finally started to see that low-level circulation and that kind of area of rotation we were talking about previously, now it's gotten a lot better with its initialization, and now we're looking at potentially a Category 2 hurricane as it moves out to sea right there. GFS definitely wants us to move south of the Azores Islands, which I do think is interesting, and quite honestly, I do find it hard to believe with that at that current point, but we'll have to pay attention to it. GFS in the long run also wants another hurricane to potentially kind of organize and develop north of the towards the Bahamas right here, as it gets like major hurricane strength right here. I don't know how believable this is, and I'm just kind of treating it as another one of the GFS being the GFS runs, at least this far out. But the energy does seem to generate from that tropical wave in the MDR. So I do find that kind of interesting, but I'm very, very skeptical about that right now. So that's your GFS. What's the Canadian going for? Canadian's pretty interesting, kind of having its act together and ramping up real quickly, actually. Still remaining a Category 1 hurricane. The CMC's been generally kind of conservative about it, but ultimately it does have this tropical wave starting to pop off over here in the main development region, getting to tropical storm strength pretty quickly after it gets off the coast of Africa right here at 1,003 millibars, and then it just kind of starts to get its act together, gets up to hurricane strength as well, so we're definitely going to want to pay attention to that as well. Canadian is also showing maybe some energy developing to a low pressure system in the from the Central American gyre as well, so we're definitely going to want to watch out for that as well going into late September. So that's your Canadian run. Here is your Icon. Right here, Icon is pretty interesting. Icon's actually been kind of consistent with this, having this peak at Category 2 intensity down the line right here that we're going to want to pay attention to. And we're also looking at this low pressure system over here that's coming off the coast of Africa, kind of taking its time to consolidate and develop. But still, the Icon does have this kind of closing off as a tropical depression at 1010 millibars right here. So definitely something to keep in mind and definitely something to consider as well, so we'll have to pay attention to that as well. That's your Icon run. Let's go ahead now and talk about the hurricane runs. We're going to start with the H-Wharf for you right here. Here it is right here. We can go ahead and show you the latest and greatest with this. H-Wharf has this system kind of struggling for the first 48 hours or so, but as time goes on, it definitely starts to consolidate its structure a lot more, especially as you get towards about 2 to 3 days out. You're looking at a 994 millibar system. I will say I am curious as to how it goes from 1,008 disorganized to 994 like that, but I digress with this, and then it kind of starts to get its act together as it heads towards Bermuda right here. 980 millibar system right here, potentially up to Category 2 intensity with this right here, potentially reaching Category 3 down the line. 960 millibar Category 3 is what the H-Wharf is forecasting for you guys right here by September 23rd. So that's something to keep in mind. HMON is not too far behind it actually. The 12Z is starting to come out, but we don't have full access to it, so we'll use the 6Z just for context right here. Here is what you have with the 6Z. Actually, hold up. HMON, Gabrielle. There we go. That's better. So here's what you have with the HMON. System needs to consolidate over the next little while, and then as we get to 2 to 3 days out, it starts to really get its act together. Its structure starts to improve a lot more, and then as we get to 75 to September 21st, starts to get potentially towards hurricane strength. As we get to this right here, and then as we get to it September 22nd right here, we're at a 120 mile per hour Category 3 hurricane. If we do have a 120 millibar hurricane, that would be a big problem with that. But you still see these hurricane runs leading the charge with this right here that you're going to want to pay attention to. Halves A and halves B are kind of lagging behind a little bit, but still they're not too far behind as well. But these are all scenarios that we're going to want to watch out for, and especially with the MDR getting tagged again from the National Hurricane Center, those are all things that we're going to want to watch out for, and we will continue to keep you updated here on the Pat's Path Predictor channel. But with that being said, we're going to go ahead and close the video out right here. I really hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you are new. As of right now, we are scheduled to stream tomorrow night at 8 p.m. Atlantic Standard Time, Eastern Time, and 7 p.m. Central Time, so be sure you stay tuned for that. We're going to have a fun stream with this, with Gabrielle potentially starting to move into better conditions as we get more data with that, and we'll have more time to look at our area of interest, and maybe the gyre if more models start to support that, which we've definitely seen some ensembles tick up with that. If you'd also like to help out, hang out, or ask us some questions, feel free to join the Storms United Discord server. The link to that is in the end screen. And with that being said, have a wonderful day, guys. Stay safe.